This video and all of its contents, including any opinions expressed by the narrator, are strictly for entertainment purposes only and is not intended in any way as a substitute for professional services and consultation from a licensed therapist, doctor, attorney, or other licensed professional service provider. Each person must make their own life decisions, and those decisions are theirs. Welcome back to Find Your Alpha. I'm back at you this week with another terrific video story, and you can see the title right on your screen. Cheating ex-wife and her AP blew through her divorce proceeds. Then he left. Now she wants to come back home to me. And she says, I made a big mistake and I'm truly sorry. Now let's get into this and see what happened here. He starts off and he says, I've been divorced going on 5 years now. The reason I'm posting is that recently I learned my ex and the guy she left me for lost all the money she got in the divorce, and after that he left her. No surprise there. Now she's destitute and trying to get me to take her back or for us to at least be friends. Be careful there, mister. We were married for 29 years and have 2 grown daughters in their late 20s. So these folks must be in their early 50s, I'm guessing, maybe even a little older than that. He says both daughters are married and I have 3 grandchildren between them. By all accounts, we had a very good marriage, and when word got around that she left me and filed for divorce, no one believed it. How many times have we heard that? I was devastated, as I had not seen any overt signs of cheating. Now, he uses the term overt here, which means he probably saw some changes, but just didn't take any action on it. I'll be the first to admit our relationship wasn't what it was when we were first married, but it was still very good. We were best friends, and I thought our love life was damn good too. It was for me anyway, but I guess she didn't feel the same. Now listen to this. One day I came home from work and she met me at the door and said we had to talk. She then told me she had been in a relationship with another man for the past 5 months and she was in love with him. I honestly thought she was joking at first, but when I realized she meant it, I broke down and went into shock. Now I can understand that in this case. This guy's been married for 29 years. He's thinking everything is fine, it's great. Then he comes home and his wife lays this on him. She had been working with an attorney for weeks and presented me with divorce papers right there. I threw the papers on the floor and begged her to talk to me, but she refused and was very matter-of-fact and cold to me. After several hours of begging and yes, crying, she left the house to be with her new man. The following day on the phone, she told me she had to do this for herself as she didn't want to spend the rest of her life regretting not taking a chance. She said even though our marriage was great, she always felt like she was living for someone else and now wants to live for herself. I had another story I remember where a woman said almost the same thing verbatim. I begged her and offered to change whatever she didn't like about me, but she told me there was no turning back and the divorce proceeded. Now, why would you change something if you've done nothing wrong, and why are you playing the pick-me dance? Never do that, guys. She moved in with him outside of Boston and only came back to the area for the divorce hearings. During the divorce, she was very cold and was only focused on getting her share of the assets. That's because she's monkey branched to a new guy, and when a woman does that, she wants nothing to do with her old guy, no matter how long they've been together, no matter how much that guy has done for her. In the end, she ended up getting a little over half of everything. Everything, by the way, I spent 30 years working for. I also had to pay alimony for 3 years, which was a disappointment to her and her attorney because they were expecting much more since we were married so long. My attorney said the judge cut me a break there. Cut you a break? He gave away half your assets and made you pay alimony, and that's a break? I don't call that a break. I think the breakdown I had in the courtroom may have had something to do with it. Before the verdict, I got emotional and asked the judge how he could approve something like this. To his credit, he was patient with me and explained that he was following the revised code for our state. Now, when he's referencing revised code, what that means is the state law. He said in our state, either partner can leave the marriage at any time and anything accumulated during the partnership gets split. It's as simple as that. He told me infidelity doesn't matter and he doesn't even consider it in his decision. So they're obviously in a no-fault state where you can just tap out at any time. The OP says, it was then I realized marriage was just another business deal and I didn't read the contract before signing. And most people don't because they think those feelings they have in those early stages of a relationship are going to last forever. Now, we're at a point in this story where I want to remind you, if you like what you've heard so far, be sure to hit that like button right now. That will help out the channel tremendously and also help get this video seen across the planet. Now, let's go on with the story. In the months leading up to the divorce and for the year that followed, I had numerous mental breakdowns and almost didn't make it. I lost 25 pounds, which wasn't a good thing as I've always been very thin. This landed me in the hospital for 4 days due to malnutrition and severe hydration. I think he meant dehydration, which started to impact my kidneys. That's not good, and guess what? She's not worth it. The only thing that kept me going were my daughters and grandchildren. Their husbands were pretty good too. If not for them, I wouldn't be here today. That health scare was a wake-up call that changed my life and brought me out of the funk I was in. I was reborn at that moment. And sometimes it takes something like that, like a health scare or something like that, to snap someone to their senses. After this happened, my daughters cut all ties with their mother, as did the rest of my family. Well, why didn't they do that before? At the time, my ex was so love blind, she really didn't seem to care all that much. She and her new love were off taking cruises or living it up at Wynn hotels in Las Vegas and Boston, posting hundreds of pictures of the two of them online. So they're really living the high life because if you've ever been to the Wynn Hotel in Las Vegas or any of these other cities, it's very expensive. After getting out of the hospital, I threw myself into my job to take my mind off things. That's paid off big time for me, and I've been promoted twice since. I can now say that I'm fully recovered mentally from my divorce and have rebuilt almost 2/3 of the assets my ex received. I feel better now than I did 20 years ago. Well, good for you. That's great. So fast forward to a few months ago when out of nowhere I found out that my ex is back in town. Initially, she told everyone she and her lover grew apart and decided to go their separate ways, but later it was revealed they had burned through all her settlement money, and once that was gone, he was gone. So probably what happened here is you had this bored housewife and somehow she gets connected to this guy who she thinks leads this exciting life, and then she latches on to him. Meanwhile, all he wants is her money and to live it up with her, and then once that was gone, so was he. Left broken alone, she decided to come back home and beg for mercy. My daughters started speaking to her primarily for the grandchildren, but they have little to do with her beyond that. I don't have an issue with this, as after all, she is their mother. As for me, I haven't seen or spoken a word to her in 3 years. Well, I think that's smart on your part. Initially, I did this out of pain avoidance, but now I don't care one way or the other. So he's obviously gotten to a point of indifference, and that's good. All I know is I don't want anything to do with her. Shortly after coming back, she wrote me a multi-page letter of apology, telling me how wonderful I am and how wrong she was. So she treated him like shit. She didn't want anything to do with him once she found her new love. But once that all crumbled and fell apart, now she's coming back on her knees begging her ex-husband. Never fall for that, guys. She said she hoped one day I could forgive her and we could be friends because she misses me so much. No, friends like that you definitely don't need. At least that's what she said in the letter, but in private conversations with various people, she's told them what she really wants is for us to fall in love again and get remarried. Of course she does, because guess what? Her comfortable life is gone. My daughters told her they don't want that, and if I did that, they'd stop talking to me. Well, good for them. Your daughters sound very based. Her parents understandably would like to see that happen as she's back living with them. Now imagine that this woman who's probably in her 50s is back living with her parents who are probably in their late 70s or early 80s. Boy, you really screwed up, lady. Actually, she lives in a small garage they converted into an efficiency apartment where her grandparents lived out the final years of their lives. So she's living in an in-law suite. The OP says she might end up doing the same, as I doubt she'll ever be able to afford a place of her own in this area. Actions have consequences. Having spent every dime she got in the divorce, she was forced to get a job for the first time in 30 years. Well, maybe you should have made her get a job when you were married after she raised the kids. Then she wouldn't have had all this time on her hand to go running around with another guy. She's working an entry-level job in the records department at the university. It doesn't pay much, but she does have good health insurance. She had to sell her car, so her parents end up taking her back and forth to work. So again, here's this older woman, and she's totally relying, it sounds like, on her parents. Her parents are probably thinking, what the hell's wrong with you? How could you have done something like that? Looking back now, what really irks me is how she blew through her settlement money. It wasn't millions, but it was substantial. That's money I could have given to my daughters and grandchildren and made their lives easier, but instead she spent it living the high life for a few years. Now she's likely to spend the rest of her days alone and barely scraping by. Well, that was her choice. That's for her to deal with, as I will not be part of her redemption process and will do everything I can to avoid contact with her. What I'd say to anyone thinking of marriage is read the fine print before signing the contract. In many places, it's no longer a bond of holy matrimony, it's just a basic business contract. And that's the end of his story. And as you can see, this was a very short story, but I think it was a very good one to cover because there's a lot of learnings from this story. And to that end, I now want to cover what I think are the morals of the story. The first one, always read the fine print before you sign the contract. And in this case, we're talking about the laws of your state as it pertains to marriage. Most people do not do that because they're so in love, they think their relationship's going to last forever. And I hope it does. But if it doesn't, those state laws are going to come into play, and it could really have a negative impact on your situation. Next, don't build your whole life around someone or something. And again, I've said this on previous videos, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Now, I don't mean if you're married, you want to have relationships with multiple women. I'm not talking about that. But what I'm saying in a case like that is if you are married, don't build your whole life around your wife. Because if something happens there and she does something like this woman, then you're going to be crushed like this guy was, and he almost lost his life because of it. Next, don't ignore changes in behavior, even the subtle ones. He mentioned she had no overt signs that anything was going on. Again, using that adjective, overt, leads me to believe that she had some changes, but he just didn't take them seriously. Next, never do the pick-me dance. Once a woman has cheated on you, and I'd say this to a woman, once a guy has cheated on you, do not do the pick-me dance. I know that's human nature to do it, and especially in this guy's case where he was married for 29 years and obviously built his whole world around this woman, but you never do that because it never works out well. Next, once a woman monkey branches, she'll want nothing to do with her ex, and this is a prime example of that. Once she found that new, exciting lover, she didn't want anything to do with her husband. And remember, she didn't even want much to do with her kids because he said she only came back to town for the divorce hearings. So she was shutting everyone out because she was so love-struck. And unfortunately for her, the rest of her life doesn't look all that bright. Meanwhile, if she wouldn't have cheated and stayed in the marriage, they could have lived happily ever after, as they say. Next, don't offer to change if you've done nothing wrong. I've read this in a number of these postings out there where guys say, I tried to do everything. I offered her the world. What did I do wrong? Never do that. If somebody cheated on you, it's not that you did something wrong. It's that they did something wrong. And finally, your mental, physical, and financial health should be your top priority. As they say when you get on an airplane, make sure you put your mask on first before you help others. That's because if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to help anyone else. So remember that, folks. And those are my thoughts. And now I'd like to hear from you. What did you think of this story, and how do you think this guy handled the situation? Would you have handled it like he did, or would you have given this woman another chance when she came crawling back on her knees saying, I just made a big mistake, honey, we've been married for 29 years. Let's just get back into that relationship we had, and maybe we can get remarried someday. Would you have fallen for that, or would you have done what this guy did? Tell us about it in the comments. Also, be sure to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to this channel. And also be sure to follow me on X. And I will talk to you on the next one.